On today's episode, we'll be reviewing 10 habits that we believe are essential to running a successful agency. We'll reflect on how they've helped our businesses and how we've come to implement them. Plus, we'll share a few bonus habits.
Okay, Sei-Wook, so this is an exciting one for us because, this is part of why we started the website AgencyHabits.com, and then also even this podcast is that, we believe a lot of what makes agencies successful are not just one-off big kind of actions, but consistent activities that we do over and over again, that compound over a long period of time. And so that's why we talk about habits a lot. And, when we think about businesses and business success, just having these habits in place are essential. So I think we can dive in. I mean, this is available on the website at agencyhabits.com. It's called The List, and we have 10 of these. But, want to go into each one of these more in depth and kind of talk about, why is this so important? Why are these so important to us? And also, we can shed a little bit light on, how these came to be and how they've evolved in our businesses over time. So we can start with the first one. It's after action reviews. And so after a project, or maybe once a quarter, if there's a retainer engagement, just getting together with the team, having a debrief of, hey, what went well, what didn't go so well, and what can we improve and do better in the future. And so, being able to document these things and then share it with the entire team, I think that's been, super essential to just getting better. We talk about continuous improvement, and, this is a habit that's not always been easy to do consistently, but when it's dialed in and it happens, it just unlocks so much learning. So what do you remember from like how this evolved for us, in the past?
I feel like over the years, it was always a nice to have this debrief meeting. But the second that we became, really diligent about scheduling them before the project was finished, having the time for the team allocated to sit down and talk about the project, it really helped give some closure to a project that, may have been going on for quite some time. Or for retainers, which doesn't naturally have a conclusion sometimes, and it just keeps going. Having a frequency where you can just get together as a team and talk about the account just helps give everyone a voice on, how things are going or not.
Yeah, I think one of the things that became incredibly helpful was sometimes, you have different team members working on different projects, and then, and we'd observe, like, we'd either read like kind of the notes from these debriefs if we weren't there, or sometimes we'd attend them, right, as the principals. And one of the things that we see is like, sometimes there are recurring issues that happen over and over again, projects, or some of these things that seem to always be tripping up the team in one way or another. And so I think, as leaders, we can kind of see opportunities to develop better SOPs, and also, encourage, people to improve the processes and systems that can then help them avoid these same mistakes over and over again. And I think that initially, like, when these were being done in a vacuum, it didn't quite happen. But I think once we started formalizing more of like a team share, we started to see more of the patterns. And I think that was a big unlock for us.
Yeah. And I think the structure really helps with that. We start by setting the framework for, what is the project that we just completed? What were some of the top line financials for that? And then having each person go around, everyone on the project team, and answer the questions, what went well, what didn't go well, what can we do to improve? And giving a voice to everybody on the team really helps surface things that, may have been missed by, different disciplines. The next one is having a weekly business development meeting. So this is, getting relevant team members together specifically from a business development team or other people that work on biz dev at the company. It could be discipline leads, could be other people, and really going through and checking in on all of the opportunities, both with new business as well as existing clients, and aligning on, what is the status, what's the next step for each opportunity. If there's any, updates that need to happen in, the CRM with, when we think the project's going to close, or when we think it's going to start, if the value has changed, and really just aligning as a team on what's the current state of new business across the company.
This was one of the most critical meetings I thought that happened within the agency, just because, first you get a sense of pipeline, like, what's kind of coming, down the line in terms of work that's going to keep the team utilized. The other piece is, just thinking about, how everyone is, like identifying these opportunities and thinking about how we can win the project, whether it's, hey, like this, we're going to involve XYZ team members and put together these kinds of, presentations, have these kinds of conversations with the client. And then it's an opportunity to strategize too, right? Because some opportunities, it's maybe not a straight proposal, but maybe more of a in-depth discovery and audit before we get to some kind of a deeper proposal. So, I always thought this was a great space every week to strategize and find a way to just have a game plan going into these opportunities.
Yeah. And related to the last habit we just talked about, the it's a good opportunity to also talk about the losses. If we didn't win something, why didn't we win it? Did the client give a reason? What's kind of our general takeaway from that whole process? And the same thing for wins. If we won something, what were the things that contributed to that?
Yeah, that's true. There's always a little
Mhm.
space for some debriefing on how we're doing with each of the deals. So that was always helpful. Moving on, the monthly team meeting. The way we looked at this is just having some kind of monthly gathering with the entire agency. And usually the structure will be sharing some important news, celebrate wins. Maybe there's some launches, and then also just highlighting any kind of commendable performance within the team. Yeah, I just remember, I mean, like we went through many iterations of this. And I remember, when we were all working in person in our New York City office, it was great. Just have everyone in our, largest conference room and, we'd prepare the presentation and you kind of feel the energy of it. Some meetings were super energetic and it was great to kind of feel everyone, uh, kind of pat each other on the back and celebrate the wins. And then, as we move more to a remote nature, you do put, I think, even more effort into the visuals of the presentations and then just some more prep work to make sure that people are engaged in the presentation. One of the things I've seen over the years is like, I think, in the past, when we're less organized about this stuff, it'd be just like maybe myself and you, like just last minute slapping this
Mhm.
together and just kind of presenting it. But I think as we gotten better, I think more people, so, in our respective agencies, like more people are involved in these kinds of presentations. Maybe different departments are contributing to it, different leaders, as well as like, individual contributors kind of, taking on a couple slides to talk about maybe projects and work that they've done. And so I think, we see that, you can really put care and do it really well and make it an engaging session. And it's a nice way to, keep everyone aligned and kind of in the loop about, hey, the momentum of the agency, what's going on, and what things to um, really focus on.
Yeah, this is always a fun meeting, and like you mentioned, you could be in Slack. People could be sharing here's some project launches, here's some things that are happening. But in the course of a day, people might miss a message. So it's really nice to have the time where everyone's together and you're really celebrating it, and even going a little bit more in depth than what a Slack message could cover. Um, and yeah, this is really a fun meeting. All right, the next is weekly outreach emails. So this is a habit where you send out an email, or it could be a LinkedIn message or some kind of outreach to somebody from the past. It could be an old client. It could be another agency operator that you haven't talked to in a while. It could be an old friend, or it could even be a cold email to somebody that you've never spoken to before or would love to work with. And this is a habit that we started years ago, and started with 2 contacts a week, went up to 5 contacts, to 10 contacts, and I think the point here is less so the number, but it's the consistency and not missing a week, because the effort really compounds over time. There's weeks that you're just slammed and it's the last thing you want to do, but you'll thank yourself months, years down the line that you put in the consistent work to reach out to people.
Yeah, and we often call this like the multi-million dollar habit because sometimes the right outreach email at the right time can just unlock just incredible opportunities, and that's happened to us in really interesting moments. I'd say there were times when pipeline was incredibly dry. We were probably not too far off from just having to make some deep cuts to the agency, and then we just kept this habit up, and then all of a sudden there's a huge opportunity that just comes through at the right time to help us. And so it's less about kind of like the number, but it did help. I think to that point, like starting with 2 was good because it was like, we were just overwhelmed, probably weren't the best at time management in the past. And like just 2 was just enough to like get something going. But I think I do remember like we did a little ramp up one time where we were like, all right, do 4 for a month, and then do 6 for a month, do 8 for a month, and then we kind of, I think we even went up to like 12 and beyond, but it was like a little bit too much, so we kind of scaled it back. But like 10 was like, you can do 10. That's 2 per day on a week, on a weekday. Like just just do it. Like, it's eating your veggies, it's doing your push-ups, just, sending out 2 emails, to people you might know. And this is incredible. Like, there's still aspects of, even, after kind of leaving the day-to-day of the agency, we still do this. And like, I don't think it's something that we'll ever stop doing. The next one is the monthly newsletter email. So, this is where the agency, just builds a list, mostly consisting first of, clients, some of their friends, let's say other agencies, partner agencies, maybe some tech platform partners, advisors, and anybody else who's been like an advocate and refer to the agency. And this is a way. So if you think about the weekly outreach email as like a one-to-one interaction where you're kind of sending a custom bespoke message to each person, this is just a way to do that more, at scale. And so remember, for Barrel, this list is probably what, 4,000 people deep. The bar doesn't have to be that high. I mean, we kind of locked in at one. If you can send one a month, that is enough. And there's the things that we typically cover are like, yeah, what are some of the projects that we've launched? What are some of the thought leadership we published? And then we try to make this as sustainable as possible. Like just like any other habit, what's important is that we're able to continue doing it month after month. And I think this itself, like it doesn't always immediately drive results, but what it actually does is and it plays a role in helping the agency be top of mind to the right people. And when the time is right, you're there to remind them that you're a viable option for an opportunity. So I always think this is a good one that we've been able to do for a long time.
Yeah. And one thing that we do in these emails is acknowledging the people that helped us. So the friends, advisors, the referrers, people who we may have met through one of those weekly outreach contacts or just people in our network. Like this is a space to give props and shout outs to those people, to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting point because I think we've evolved. I remember at one point we only sent emails showcasing recent work, and then over time we kind of layered in another email that kind of talked more about the news, some thought leadership, conferences we'd be attending, and then of course the thank you, the shout outs, the refers. And so I think start monthly, but then I think if you can almost increase that amount. So, more touches to stay top of mind.
Sounds good. All right. The next habit is having a weekly client account check-in. So this is typically, a conference call with all the account managers or people who, manage the client relationships at the agency, and going through every single active client and getting a handle on how things are going. And depending on the nature of who's in the room, it could be anything from kind of the financial state of each of the accounts, specific projects that are going well or could be going sideways. And really, you're trying to anticipate, head off any client issues that are on the horizon or surface new opportunities. And I think the here is all the account managers are in a room together hearing about accounts that they're not even involved in. So they can, glean some insights and get some ideas for their own accounts.
Yeah, this is clutch. I mean, I think it's first of all, just for agency leaders, it gives them a good pulse check on a week basis. And then there's sometimes, it's another opportunity, just like the business development meeting, to put kind of our pattern matching skills to use because, some of these issues, I mean, especially, if you've run the business a long time and, there are problems that surface that, maybe new to the account managers, but, as the agency leader, you might have seen a version of this in the past. And so you can almost help anticipate some of these, like, hey, like just so you know, like in the past when such a situation happened, this is how we handled it, and then you can kind of give that insight to then have these account managers navigate the issue. So I think it's just such a great like preventative measure for de-escalating kind of things that might be brewing, and then also to just sniff out opportunities, because maybe even with these client account check-ins, there's things that can naturally lead to opportunities that then can flip into the business development side of things. I think the quarterly business review. So the QBR, this is something that may not be applicable to every client. It just really depends on the types of clients you have. But typically, for our, let's say, largest or kind of most impactful clients, just by revenue size or depth of work or whatever it might be, and also just potential to build that relationship. QBRs are a great habit and a tool for just building the relationship further with the client. So this is typically takes form in a meeting that's set before or shortly after a new quarter starts. And so, I mean, this could be different types of structures, but one of the things that we've done is first just have a review of like all the work that was done the previous quarter, maybe talk about the impact, and then really it's about discovery. It's about getting the client talking about their business, what's been happening on their end, what they have in plan for the upcoming quarter and beyond. And doesn't have to necessarily be specifically related to the work that your agency is working on, but it could just give more color, more context on where where their business is going and how we might fit into that. And then the productive output of this could be a roadmap or some kind of alignment on priorities that could be worked on together for the upcoming months. And so, yeah, this is extremely powerful. This is in some ways a business development tool because, it could unlock a lot more work. It's a retention tool because, if you have, let's say, a retainer, then this gives you, a chance to really make good use of that retainer and deliver on productive work. So yeah, the QBR, super powerful. It takes work, but it's worth it if you can execute it well.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think, again, this is you might be meeting with the same client every single week, but, the tone of this is having this space to talk and think a little bit on a longer time horizon than the week to week tasks that are happening with the work. And then one kind of byproduct of, putting together a report of, the work that you've done over the past quarter. Oftentimes these people share it with their managers and kind of show the impact of their own contributions to their company. So it's kind of a win-win for them as well. The next is we call it minding the bottom. So this habit is about thinking about performance management at your company. It's identifying and thinking about underperformers in the business. And, this cadence could be quarterly or annually, depending on the team size and the overall culture. And it's more an exercise of kind of getting together with the key leaders and identifying who they feel are the lowest performers. It doesn't necessarily mean that any immediate action needs to be taken, but if you can come to kind of some consensus and figure out, is this, is there action needed here? Should we go through a performance improvement plan for this person, or do we need to take the steps to transition them out of the business? And this I would say it's just helpful to do as an exercise. We would do it kind of quarterly as a leadership team to just think about the business, and whether or not we took action was something we decided at that point.
Yeah, this came about for us with from a very specific perspective, which was that when you have underperforming people, especially like really underperforming people that maybe they're unreliable in their with meeting deadlines, don't communicate well, or just kind of do things that might be a bit destructive to the rest of the team. They drag the entire culture down. It's basically like and if you think about culture as kind of like the things that you would you tolerate and don't tolerate within the business, then it's like it's a clear red flag if you're allowing underperformers to continue as is within the business. And so this habit is really an opportunity to just have that conversation. It's a tough conversation, but within leadership of like, hey, are there people that are underperforming and why? And usually, people talk, people like just, if you have superstars that, they're going to be the first to kind of, highlight that, maybe not directly, but like even indirectly, they're going to hint that, hey, there's some people here that are not held accountable and not doing what they're supposed to do. I think as leaders, it's really important to then, take a hard look and be like, hey, how do we mitigate this? Obviously, is there a performance improvement plan that needs to be put into play? Is there a clear way to transition this employee out? And so, yeah, it's tough. A lot of people avoid this, and when you do avoid it, that's when your culture really suffers, and you end up losing your best people. So this is like, I think this is one of the most important things that leaders can do, but also one of the hardest. Let's go to client feedback surveys. So this is the ninth one. So we got one more after this. So client feedback surveys, this is a good way to, just going into that, tandem with, like a after action review. This is on the client side. So, whereas the after action review is more of the team weighing in on how things went. This is, reaching out to clients and then getting their input on, hey, how did this project go? Or how is our relationship going? And it's an opportunity to, ask them about the agency's quality of work, the level of service, the communication, whether it's responsive enough or, clear. Also just the impact and the value of the work. Hey, is our pricing good? Like, are you getting, the value that you thought you would? And yeah, it doesn't have to be crazy complicated. I mean, we've tried NPS in the past, but I think, we wanted a bit more detail. And so I think it's helped to have some more questions in these surveys. The opportunity just to get feedback, right? Because feedback is, at the end, it could be tough, but it's information for the leadership team to then align on, learn from, and then kind of find ways to improve the offering or, kind of how they're servicing the clients. And so, yeah, I remember, Sei-Wook, you've put together a few of these in the past.
Yeah, and we've kind of gone through many evolutions on this, and like you mentioned with NPS, where we try to put a number on it and see the trend of the number. But oftentimes, a gap with that is if you don't have a complete data set, the numbers get very skewed quickly. So if it's more qualitative than quantitative, actually gives you some more context that you can take action on without having 100% participation, because realistically, some people may not respond to the surveys.
Yeah, no, it's very hard to get every client to fill out all these surveys. It's one of these things that it's still worthwhile to do, even if the participation rate of clients isn't complete.
Number 10, it's having annual and quarterly goals and priorities. So this is really just setting aside the time each quarter and each year to set goals. So typically things like revenue, profit, or new business targets, and really think about the priorities for that upcoming period, whether it's the next quarter or the next year. And part of that is reflecting on, what happened in the past quarter, past year, and what do we need to change in the business to get going and move the needle towards kind of the new goals.
Yeah. And this is pretty simple, but not every agency does this. And I think it's one of those things also, when you set a goal, and let's say, sometimes, it could be an incremental goal where, you're hoping to grow, let's say 15, 20%. And, if you can continue that could compound nicely. Or it could be like a very aggressive growth. Hey, like this year, we're taking a leap. We need to grow 100%. I think what this habit forces you to do as a team is to then, work backwards and be like, all right, how are we getting there? What do we need to do when in order to hit that mark by the end? And so even in the quarter, if you want to end the quarter with a certain amount of revenue, or let's say like new business booked, you got to really have a plan for, generating the leads, generating the meetings, and then having a certain kind of close rate at a certain contract value to hit that goal. And this exercise forces you to do that versus kind of going into it, in a freestyle manner. So I think it's one of those things you just have to make time for every quarter.
Yeah, I think, oftentimes you'll start with the annual goal and a quarter goes by and you're either way off track or on track. And you may need to think about, is the next quarter's goal realistic based on that, our performance? So we need to increase our performance or targets to make up for underperformance, or are we just heading in a much faster direction? So do we need to just like reforecast how the next, few quarters are going to go. So I think, yeah, the frequency is really helpful to do it more than once a year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
things change and you gotta
Yeah.
adjust as necessary. Okay,
Mhm.
so those are the 10 essential ones that we've listed on the website, but we have a few bonus ones. Maybe Siwik, you wanna just share a bonus one that you have in mind?
One is around reviewing finances on a weekly basis, at least. And this is more for typically leadership teams, CEOs, people who really may be one step removed from the day to day transactional aspect of accounting. And this kind of meeting is typically reviewing, what are the invoices that are going to be issued in the upcoming week or two? What are some of the big payables that are going out in the next week or two? And really getting a handle on the cash position of the business and making decisions based on that. So whether it's realizing something about, hey, XYZ clients haven't paid us for 60 days. We need to take some action. And hopefully it doesn't go as far as 60 days and you've taken action before then. But it's really the cadence to make sure that you don't get too far behind on, understanding where you are financially.
Yeah, that's a really good one. And yeah, I'll share another bonus one as well. You could kind of think about this one as maybe a couple different habits, but related. So one is this idea of like reviewing your org chart, and I think it's a helpful exercise to do every quarter at least. So you take a look at how the organization, who's in what roles, and this could be actually related to mining the bottom too, because you're kind of looking at different underperformance happening maybe across the company. But then when you review the org chart, the other opportunity is to look for, yeah, like either gaps that you need to fill or, ways you can level up. So, this could be identifying, let's say, hey, there's some kind of, responsibility or tasks that are falling, let's say, on this particular person who actually should be focused on something else, and maybe this is a new role that needs to be created. So the org chart can reviewing the org chart can kind of create the opportunities for, different roles to emerge. And then the other part might be, hey, like, somebody might be, in line for a promotion because, they're showing, a lot of initiative and it just feels like they're outgrowing their role right now. So, there's an opportunity to move people up. And then there's also ways to think about, hey, we have some gaps here. Like this capability is pretty weak. Like we really need to fill it with a person who has these capabilities. And so that's where the other habit, which is always be recruiting, comes in. And so this once you kind of identify a gap and you're like, oh, we need to find somebody, or maybe you have somebody who's being overwhelmed in a particular role and they need some redundancy. That's another gap as well. So the always be recruiting habit is more around finding time, just having a way, and for smaller agencies, it's definitely going to fall on the agency leader versus having a dedicated talent acquisition team. So it might be as simple as, hey, like let's make sure the job posts are up, or some kind of way for applicants to flow in, and then let's make time for us to either review applications or book interviews. And great if you can delegate some of the application reviewing, but then it's still worthwhile to spend some time, especially for roles that are higher up, to interview proactively. And you might not always be filling an immediately active role, let's say, but just to get ahead of it, meet people, talk to them, get a sense of experience. I can't tell you how many times, like myself, also just some of our agency leaders who've, taken time to talk to somebody about a role, only to find that, hey, I've been thinking about this all wrong. It's actually a different kind of role, or we got to evolve this. So I think that's always a good practice.
One more bonus is thinking about and having a space for reviewing utilization and forecasting on your team, especially when you have a lot of full-time resources. Utilization kind of, well, first, kind of making sure you have targets for each team member, looking at how you're tracking that. And each company is slightly different. If you do, hourly time tracking, whether you do kind of resourcing in a different way that kind of reflects what a team member's capacity and what they're assigned to is. But really having that discipline to understand, do we have the right amount of work for the team that we have currently? And then and that utilization is typically a kind of backwards looking metric, but really the better you can get about forecasting, what does the next week, 2, 3, 4 look like? that you can map out, and you can really decide, to Peter's last point, do you need to be recruiting, or should you have been recruiting because you need a new team member in the next, week or two, or do we really need to fill the pipeline because we have a big gap in our team coming up shortly? So I think having that discipline to look at it, and as much as possible, have an accurate picture of the future is definitely helpful.
Yeah, no, I just love how these all go hand in hand. Obviously, yeah, forecasting is the activity, and then the utilization is almost like the score, is the score on the scoreboard, right? Of like, hey, did you forecast right and put the right people in there? Yeah, no, this has been great. I think, the 10 essential habits are on the website for anyone to review. We have some of these have extra articles that you could go deeper into. I do feel like, there's an opportunity for us to go even deeper with like a finance, business ops focused list of habits. So I think that's something we can work on in the future as well. Yeah, love this topic. And, we hope you all have take away some good lessons and value from this. Thank you.
Thanks.